So what is Psalm 14? Psalm 14 is a hymn. It is a song, like most of the Psalms. And in particular, almost ironically, humorously, Psalm 14 is a hymn, a song, to the atheist.
Welcome to The God-Centered Life with Josh Moody. Biblical answers to life's big questions, that's the name of our series. Today, Psalm 14 in the focus as we talk about the existence of God. Josh Moody is senior pastor of College Church located in Wheaton, Illinois. I'm your host, Todd Bastide. Well, as mentioned there, Josh, the series is called Biblical Answers to Life's Big Questions, and I doubt you're going to find a question bigger than this one.
Such a huge one, isn't it? For those of us in the church, we sometimes think the answer is, well, obviously, yes. But when you engage with people outside the church, you find that many people today wrestle with that question. Does God really exist? We need to find a way to formulate a response to that is biblical, has engagement with that, and helps people. People like Bertrand Russell, the famous atheist, who said, why didn't he believe in God? His answer was, there's not enough evidence. Yes, there is enough evidence, but there's also the God who meets the deeper questions behind that kind of question. And that's what this study's all about.
Excellent. The foundation, Psalm 14, the existence of God in focus. Here's Josh.
Well, the title for the sermon this morning is The Existence of God, and that might strike you as a slightly strange title to give to a sermon on Sunday morning, given the fact that presumably we do believe in the existence of God, otherwise why would we be here? But this is the second in a series of sermons where I am asking questions that you all ask me. So I will receive emails or phone calls, sometimes from the parents, sometimes from the college students themselves, people who have gone off to university, and they come back and they ask some questions. We looked last week at the reliability of the Bible, and this week we're looking at the existence of God. And this is another question that people do ask me, and hence I'm dealing with a question that is actually before us commonly. By the way, research shows that about 89% of Americans believe in God. So that's a vast majority still. But since 1980, those who are born since 1980, there has been, statistics show, a gradual decline, not a massive decline, but a decline of those born after 1980 believing in God. So this is a relevant theme and a relevant topic. So what is Psalm 14? Psalm 14 is a hymn. It is a song, like most of the Psalms. And in particular, almost ironically, humorously, Psalm 14 is a hymn, a song, to the atheist. So if an atheist, it begins by saying, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. That is someone who does not believe in God. If an atheist was to sing a hymn or a song, what hymn or song would they sing? And the psalm is saying this kind of song, this kind of hymn. It is clearly important to the Bible because as far as I know, this is the only chapter in the whole of the Bible that is repeated. Psalm 14 also occurs as Psalm 53. There are a few minor differences, in particular, the name for God that in this psalm is the Lord. In Psalm 53 is translated as God, a different name for God, Elohim. Other than that, and a few minor differences, they are basically the same. Clearly the Bible is saying this is important. If an atheist was to be religious, what kind of hymn would they sing? Actually, atheists often are a little bit religious. When I was younger, we went off to the former Soviet Union fairly soon after the Berlin Wall had fallen down. And there in Moscow, we visited what is known as Lenin's Mausoleum, right there in Red Square. It's a very large structure. in the middle of this massively impressive political center. And there in the mausoleum is, well, Lenin, at least his body, carefully looked after each night by a small army of experts so that you can stand in line and pay your respects to Lenin. It is a shrine to an atheist. We seem inevitably to end up being, in some way or other, religious or desiring some sort of hero figure or some sort of ultimate ideology. In fact, there is a rather tiny movement of people who get together on Sundays to meet together and sing hymns and all that, and they are atheists. I don't know about you, but if I didn't believe in God, I would find something else to do on Sunday morning. If an atheist was to sing a religious song, what would they sing? Psalm 14. It is in 3 sections. First, what they say, verse 1. Second, what we do, verses 2 to 6. And then third, what God does in verse 7. What they say, what we do, and what God does. First, what they say, verse 1. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. Now that is not a very flattering way to describe someone who doesn't believe in God, as a fool. In fact, if that is you this morning, you may end up being a little offended by this psalm. How outrageous. Surely it is people who go to church who believe in their invisible friend who are fools. Not me, who's so rational and only believes in what he can see and taste and touch. But as we go through this psalm, I want to urge you to think. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. It is a little bit offensive. It reminds me of the story of the great Southern Baptist preacher, W.A. Criswell. I probably pronounced his name entirely wrong. You can correct me afterwards. I should say like Jarl Criswell or something. I don't know. W.A. Criswell. W.A. Criswell was a great preacher and a godly man. He was famous for many things. One of them was preaching often in a white suit. I should try that sometime. It might cheer things up. Another piece of famous advice he once gave to some seminarians was that he was asked what was the secret of his long and effective ministry, and he replied, the secret was being able to minister to women. Not a bad piece of advice. Women are very important in the ministry of Cottage Church, and often, if we're honest, women do things better than some of us men. But the particular thing that I'm reminded about with regard to W.A. Criswell was one Sunday after the Soviet astronaut had gone for the first time into outer space, obviously an atheist. And there he was in his little spaceship, and the media had been recording every word of his and broadcasting it around the world as he had given testimony to his experience. And one of the things that this man had said was that he had been to the heavens and he had looked around and he had not seen God. Now, by the way, that is, of course, a very literalistic view of what we Christians mean by heaven. We do not mean by heaven, and we do not think by God and heaven that God is somehow hiding behind the moon somewhere. Heaven is another dimension. Actually, physics these days tends to think there are many different universes. But anyway, there was W.A. Criswell, the Sunday after this famous statement had been reported of the Soviet atheist astronaut. He'd gone to the heavens, he looked at the heavens, and he had not seen God, and therefore, of course, ergo, God does not exist. So quick as a flash, W.A. Criswell gets to his pulpit the next Sunday and relays this story and says, well, I'll tell you this. If that Soviet astronaut had taken his helmet off, he would have seen God. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. It doesn't sound very kind. Not Minnesota nice.
More on the existence of God and how we can bank on it in just a moment. But what a reassuring thought that no matter what year it is, we can count on God. We hope you're finding this study helpful as you prepare to head into another year. Maybe one with new challenges, hopefully one with new victories, certainly one with God at the center. GodCenteredLife.org has resources to help you with that. Let's get back into our Psalm 14 study now. Here's Josh.
Now, I am not going to be, as we go through this psalm, recording the standard apologetics for the existence of God. Cosmological, ontological arguments. My wife, when I preached on Saturday night, reminded me that I missed out her favorite, teleological. Is this presuppositional, evidentialist? I'm not going to be doing any of that. When I mention cosmological, ontological, all the seminarians in the church get very excited. And the rest of you begin to switch off. Instead, I am taking the truly radical approach of asking myself, what does the Bible say? And it begins by telling us that the fool is the one who is uttering in his heart, there is no God. Now, how can that be the case? Surely atheists are the intellectuals. But the argument being made is that the very utterance of language, which is a gift from God, the very logic which is being used, which is a reflection of the Logos, should by itself persuade the thinking man or woman that the material universe is not only matter. The fool says in his heart, there is no God, and by saying that, denies the speech giver, and by arguing that, denies the one who is Logos, who makes argument. There are some particular things that are very often commonly said these days, not just in the heart, but proposed externally. I'm just going to mention a few of them. It is often said today that science has disproved God. So in the psalm, the fool says in his heart, and then the Lord looks down and goes, you're kidding, that's not true. Science has disproved God. Well, is that actually the case? Statistics do show that only 7% of the National Academy of Scientists in America, that is the elite group of scientists in America, only 7% believe in God, which is not a large number. On the other hand, statistics also show us that 63% of physicists believe in God. And among all professional scientists, physicists, chemists, biologists, among all professional scientists in America, 43% believe in God. In fact, more striking than that, obviously those statistics reflect broadly the general concurrence in our population, but more striking than that is this set of statistics, which was recently done in a fairly recent survey, just a decade or so ago, was a mirror image of exactly the same survey that was done in 1916. 1916, 63% of physicists, 43% of scientists believe in God. End of the 20th century, exactly the same set of statistics. Now, of course, you know how people can use statistics. The Times, when it was announced that really there'd been no change in the number of scientists believing in God, said as their heading for the article, "Scientists are still keeping their faith." And at the same time, another newspaper said, "Disbelief proves to be constant among scientists." What can we say these statistics at least mean? At least we can say that a century of scientific progress, for which we are all glad, microphones, cars, airplanes, air conditioning, for which we are all glad, has basically made no difference to the number of scientists believing in God. Clearly, there's another factor at work. By the way, you don't have to be a literal 7-day young earth creationist to believe in God, in the God of the Bible. Some people are literal 7-day young earth creationists. The Lord bless you if that is you. Some people are not. The Lord bless you too. Augustine, who lived a long time before Charles Darwin, so he was not trying to respond to Charles Darwin. Augustine was not a literal 7-day young earth creationist. And it was good enough for Augustine. I guess it's good enough for other people. Some atheists say everything is relative anyway. In other words, okay, so you can believe in God in your own private world, but it doesn't mean it's true. Everything is relative. I heard one university commencement speaker say, "It is absolutely true that there is no absolute truth." Hold on, help me. Now that man is, I won't tell you his name, but that man is a brilliant man. Put that in your relativistic pipe and smoke it. To say it is an absolute truth that everything is relative is to make an absolute truth statement that there are no absolute truth statements. Or very often today it is said, religion is the cause of all the wars in the world. Well, let's think about that. And there's good reason to say that today, for very clearly some kinds of very sick religion are at least being today catalytic for violence and horror. But again, would you think with me, religion is the cause of all the wars in the world, and therefore God doesn't exist. Hold on here. Even if it were the case that religion is the cause of all the wars in the world, which it is not, as I will attempt to show you in just a moment, even if it were the case, would that mean that God does not exist? Mosquitoes are the cause of malaria in the world. Does that mean that mosquitoes don't exist? Just because I don't like the effects of something doesn't mean it's not true. Just because something doesn't please me doesn't mean it's not reality. I don't happen to like my options in this current cycle of the election for the next American president. Does that mean that neither exist? No, it doesn't. But it is also not true that religion is the cause of all the wars in the world. Certain kinds of sick religiosity have been catalytic for violence, yes. But then, what about atheism? To mention just a couple, Pol Pot, whose killing fields murdered thousands. An atheist. Stalin makes Pol Pot look like just a beginner. Murdered millions. An atheist. No, the cause of all the wars and evil in the world is not religion or atheism, it is you and me. It is people. First, what they say, verse 1. The fool says in his heart, there is no God.
That's Josh Moody, and this is The God-Centered Life. Josh, you mentioned mid-lesson that you're not going to be jumping into the standard apologetics for the existence of God, including your wife's favorite, the theological argument. So where's the balance between being able to articulate some form of this, arguing for the existence of God, versus living by faith?
Yeah. Well, the phrase living by faith is an interesting one, because so many people have misunderstandings of what it means to accept God by faith. Does it mean, like the Danish philosopher Kierkegaard put it, that it's a kind of leap of faith? Or is faith more like Thomas Kuhn in his Structure of Scientific Revolutions put it, as a paradigm whereby you accept what's true, and therefore to believe in God by faith is much more like all the evidence fits together in a pattern, and so my paradigm is to believe in that. Or, more foundationally, faith being a gift from God, there's a supernatural work that gives us faith. When we say living by faith, we're not saying that it's irrational. What we are saying is that it's true reason, as God by His Spirit illuminates our heart and mind to see the reality. So the reality is that God is everywhere. Every breath I take, every thought I think, every movement of my body, every word I speak could not take place if it were not for the constant upholding of the living God Himself. And all that is an expression of God's existence. And to doubt that from a person who has eyes to see is almost insane.
All right, so I'm going to press you on this because you just hit up some heavy hitters there, but Jesus said, childlike faith.
Yep.
A child is not going to be rattling off all these apologists.
No.
And saying, well, there's this element and this element.
Right.
Where's the balance where we just say, I believe? Mm-hmm. That's enough.
Well, I think actually the child gets that much better than many of us do, because what we're really talking about is a relationship. So when the Bible talks about faith, it's talking about trust. So in the same way that a child trusts his or her father or trusts his or her mother and has an inbuilt desire and predisposition to do so, similarly we are to trust God. And that's exactly what it is. There's reason behind it. It's reasonable to trust your father, but in the end it's a relational trust. And so in many ways the child, obviously, as you put it, I rolled off some heavy hitters, but the childlike trust is expressing that. It's not irrational, childlike faith.
Right.
It's rational, but it's relational.
Rational and relational. I love that pairing. Well, Josh, getting ready to close the books on 2025. What's exciting for you as you look ahead to 2026?
It's one of those truths of reality is we don't know what's coming, but we do know the Lord Jesus is returning. And in the meantime, it's our job who follow Jesus to do everything we can to get the gospel out. And here at God-Centered Life, we're doing that by calling everyone to center their lives upon God. We're doing that together, not just Todd and me in the studio, but all of us who are involved with GCL listening. Share it with everyone you know, and let's do all we can this year to call our friends, our family, our neighbors, our churches to center their lives on God.
I just want to be clear. It sounded like you were telling us that Jesus is returning in 2026, but you're not.
We don't know when He's going to return.
Okay.
It's one of the unknowns for 2026.
Okay, terrific. Well, we here, Josh, myself, and everyone involved, wish you a very happy new year. We're going to be coming back after the new year with another look at biblical answers, and we're going to be exploring the odd topic of functional atheism.
The human condition that we all naturally incline towards is functional atheism. We functionally want to live as if God did not exist.
Continuing our Biblical Answers series, GodCenteredLife.org, our website, and we would love to have you join us when we next gather around God's Word right here for The God-Centered Life with Josh Moody. And Happy New Year!